All right. Can everybody hear me okay? I'll get that out of the way first so everybody can hear me. I'd like to welcome everybody this morning. We're in Matthew. We're going to finish up a little bit from last week, and then we're going to start on Matthew 10:24. How far we'll get is anybody's guess. Hey, look who's back. Good to be back. Good to see everybody out this morning. Dreary, cold, it's fixing to get worse. How many deer did you see this morning, Charles? No, I mean just to see. Oh, I don't go, I just see them. I probably saw 9 this morning just coming here. Well, 7, because I saw 2 of them the second time as I went back to get my lesson because I forgot. I remembered food for the church eats church, but I forgot my lesson laying right there. So, yeah, I do live in the woods. That is true. I think he was talking about the deer, but okay. You forgot your lesson too? I think it comes with just my wife not being home reminding me. That's what the deal is, so I can get to blame her. See how easy that was? Just shove that blame off. She'll have to repent when she gets to church this morning. I think she's on her way. So, yes, sir. Oh, that can't be it, can it? No, I think it is age. There's no doubt. There is no doubt. So, I get more easily distracted now. The older I get, the more easily distracted I get. So, it's something I'm going to have to get used to, I guess. So, all right. So, last week we kind of finished up with the disciples being sent out and the fear involved with that, and what was going on there, and that it wasn't much of a pep talk for the disciples to be, or the apostles as they were being sent out, telling them all the things that was going to happen, and sure enough, the disciples were indeed persecuted. They were beaten, imprisoned, and even killed. And so all the things that Jesus, I don't think it wasn't really a warning. It was just told them what to expect. And so that's exactly what happened. And we also talked about division. Christ's message would divide and pit brother against brother and those kind of things. And those things actually did happen. You know, one family against another, and split parents from their children, and brothers and sisters from brothers and sisters, and even, you know, if you look at Jesus' own family, was kind of, we don't have record of them believing in him in their lifetime. And so, as the disciples faced this harsh reality of persecution, because they know it's coming, when they were called into account for themselves, and we talked about they're steering the boat now. Jesus is not with them. Jesus is not in person with them, and we know about the Spirit stuff. Because when they were called to account for themselves, God will give them special wisdom, and we saw that happen, to make the appropriate answer for, you know, what they're speaking, what they're saying. You know, give them what to say when they come before the authorities, and they were, you know, they found families were divided, and they got chased from town to town, and all the things that Jesus informed them of. It was kind of, you know, this life that you've seen me lead, that you've been with me as I've led this life. This is the life that you're going to lead also, just because of your belief in me and your belief in the way. And but one of the things they were told, they needed to be patient. Okay, they needed to be patient. It wasn't going to be an easy go, but it wasn't going to be I don't even know, because it was for some of them it was a long journey. Some of them it wasn't as long. So as we get all the way to verse 23, in the end of verse 23, it's a promise of things to come. It wasn't just a warning of what was going to happen. It was a promise of things to come, and ultimately the reward based on their activities. So they were to be shrewd as snakes, innocent like doves. Okay, we read that. And the problem with, I don't know that it's a problem. The thing with Christians today is we can either be one or the other. It's really difficult to be both. And so, because without innocence, your shrewdness, or that can become manipulative. You can use that to manipulate people. And so, without the shrewdness, the innocence becomes you're just naive. You're not. You lose your. I guess if you lose your awareness.
You become susceptible to a lot of.
And that's the problem. The susceptibility to. We can see. The susceptibility to I always go back to the televangelists and the preachers on TV. I think they succumb to the wealth and the power and the acclaim and the notoriety and all of the things that come with being a TV personality rather than God's work. You can see the almost a framework of God's work, but it always points back to the money or those kinds of things. So those are stumbling blocks for people to be aware of, and obviously Christ was teaching his apostles that these are the things that come, and these are the things to be aware of, and watch out. And we're going to get more into that here in just a little bit. So as we move into Matthew 10, verses 24 through 31, we'll read that. The disciple isn't greater than the teacher, and the slave isn't greater than the master. It's quite enough for the disciple to be like the teacher, and the slave to be like the master. If they called the master of the house Beelzebub, think what they're going to call his family. Don't be afraid of them. Nothing is hidden, you see, that won't come to light. Nothing is secret that won't be made known. What I tell you and what you hear and whisper, speak from the rooftops. What I tell you in the darkness, speak in the light. Don't be afraid of people who can kill the body, but can't kill the soul. The one you should be afraid of is the one who can destroy both body and soul in Gehenna. How much would you get for a couple of sparrows? A penny, if you're lucky. And not one of them falls to the ground without your Father knowing about it. So when it comes to you, every hair on your head is counted. So don't be afraid. You're worth much more than a great many sparrows. And I'm going to talk about something right now that I didn't research. Okay, I did not take the time to research, and so I don't want you to take this as fact. Okay, but it was an interesting statement. What command is repeated most often in the Scriptures? Anybody got any idea? I know the things that come to mind. Love your brothers, yeah. You're commanded, behave yourself, or smarten up, or say your prayers, or worship God more wholeheartedly, or give your money away. Those kinds of things that come to our mind. The command that's given most is don't be afraid. Okay? And you guys can research that for me, and come and you can tell me I'm wrong, or you can. But I do know that it's important, and I don't think. Well, you can see why Jesus would tell his disciples not to be afraid. You know, the walk they're about to walk, they can't walk in fear, and they can't be timid, and they can't, you know, all the things that we know, because we know that the authorities are going to be after them, that they'll suffer physical and emotional violence. People will start calling them all sorts of names that they've already become, you know, called Jesus, and there's plenty to be afraid of. And he says, don't be afraid. Now, I don't think that's as simple as it sounds, because we've all heard that courage isn't the lack of fear. Okay? Courage is the ability to do what you need to do in spite of that fear. And I like to think of it more like that, because I can't process in my mind not being afraid of the things that I'm afraid of. Okay? I can, you know, and we won't tell my kids, because they're not even, so. I'm afraid of stuff. I think everybody has a fear of something. I never could process that my dad was afraid of anything, you know, because you look to your dad and you think there's no way. But my dad was afraid of cats. And not just kind of afraid of cats. He was terrified of cats. Okay? I grew up in San Diego, so when he'd take us for a walk, if there was a cat on the sidewalk, we would cross the street. Or we would go the other way. It was not you know, if I see it, it's okay and I can avoid it. It was, he's not, you know. I thought it was funny, you know. But then I was a kid, okay? And so now I look at my own fears. I don't think that's funny at all, you know. And, you know, phobias, you know, snakes and spiders and rats and heights and all of the things that you know of, that there's a fear of. I can't process how to get rid of that. Now, I can process how to face that fear with courage and do what needs to be done in the face of that fear, but I don't know how to get rid of that fear. And so you would think, as Christ is sending out the apostles, that he's going to give them the answer to that question. You know, it would seem logical to somebody that needs the answer, you know, to give it to him. But he doesn't necessarily do that, you know. He doesn't say, you know, don't be afraid because God will look after you, okay, in this part of the scripture we've been looking at. He does say it later, you know, and we know that God will take care of us. But he doesn't say that. He doesn't give any encouragement at all as far as, I don't even know if it's a reward, but a reward for not being afraid. You know, do what needs to be done, even in the face of fear, I think is what he's talking about. And so, and the reason, he actually gives a reason. It's not a way to combat it, but the reason is because in the end, everything will be made known. Everything will come to light. All those things in the darkness will come to light. I don't know, for me, that would be a good a good enough explanation or a good enough answer to that fear. And so, why should that mean that we don't need to be afraid? Because if everything is going to come to light, that's probably something I would be afraid of. I don't want Ed to know everything about me. You know, I want Ed to know the good stuff about me, you know, because I want Ed to love me. I want him to care for me. I want him to even, you know, have a respect for me, or you know, a feeling of partnership and friendship and all those things. I want all those good things that Ed can give me based on what he knows about me. Okay? I don't want him to know the bad stuff, so he'll hate me or ignore me or talk about me, or, you know, those kind of things, you know. So when Christ says, don't worry about it because everything's going to come to light, I don't want those things to come to light. I don't think anybody wants those things to come to light. So that would just put more fear in me. You know, that would, oh, if I do this, who I am will actually come to light, and that may not be what I want everybody to see. And so, but what Christ is talking about coming to light is the apostles and the disciples, their who they are in Christ is going to come to light. Their message of truth is going to come to light. Their loyalty and faith is going to come to light. Okay, those are the things that we want to come to light. You know, I want Mark to know that I have a faith that drives me to do good. You know, I want everybody to know that I'm a loyal follower of Christ, and that I will stand for Christ and with Christ and for His message. And so those are the kind of things that Jesus is talking about are going to come to light. And so the loyalty and faith that they've seen, the world has seen as you follow the true Messiah, are the things that's going to come to light, the true Lord. And so truth will come, justice will prevail, and those who have lived with integrity and innocence, despite what the world says, will be vindicated. Okay, Scripture talks about don't worry about what people say. If they say things that are not true, you act in such a way that what they say cannot be true. So it would never be true. Which is bizarre that this just happened Friday. But I have a friend at work. He's from El Salvador. He's an older man. He's about that tall. But he's always full of joy and happy and singing, and he washes cars for a living. Okay, in El Salvador, he ran a trucking company. In America, he washes cars, and he loves it. He just is this guy that's filled with joy. Okay, now we had a temporary worker who was the polar opposite of Victor, which is my buddy's friend, my buddy's name. And this guy is one of those guys. He's just one of those guys. He accused Victor of pulling a knife on him. Okay? Right after he pulled the knife on the boss. Okay? So nobody in the store had any doubt that there was no way that Victor pulled a knife on anybody, first off, or that it wasn't even in him to do a thing like that. So everybody knew that was not the case, okay? But it was still had to be talked about because it was brought up, okay? The guy got escorted off the premises, and he no longer works there, and those kind of things. But Victor lives such a life at work. His work life is such that we all knew that there was no way that something like that would happen. Okay? And so we as Christians should live our lives in the world that if somebody says something crazy, like we pulled a knife on somebody, everybody should know that that's just not the case. There's just no way that could be the case. And so that's the way the apostles were to live their lives in what they were having to say as truth and power, and knowing that they were going to be persecuted for it. And, it's interesting that Jesus tells the apostles, don't be afraid. And that was his first thing, don't be afraid. But be afraid. But don't be afraid. Okay? Seems to be a little conflict there. And I would say that there's no conflict at all, because there were obvious things that we find in the scriptures that there were enemies of Christianity. There were enemies of Christ in the way. You had Rome and you had Herod and you had all their cronies and the priests and the Sadducees that were on the take, or any of those kind of things. There was a lot of turmoil and stuff regarding Christ and his message and his followers and the ones that spoke his message and lived his message. Say, and so those, and we know Herod had the power to kill the body. Okay, but there were darker enemies that could kill the soul as well. Enemies who were battling for that soul, even now, during Jesus' ministry, and were using the more obvious enemies as a cover. I thought that was an interesting look at it. I thought that was an interesting perspective. Okay, we can see Satan working through the enemies to cause havoc in the way. We can see with the death of Christ, with the death of the apostles, in some ways, and with the persecution of the church, and all of those things. We can see the influence of the devil in those kind of things. So, people of light are never more at risk than when they're lured into fighting the darkness with more darkness. I thought that was pretty interesting too. You're never in more risk than if you're a person of the light fighting darkness with more darkness. Okay, two wrongs don't make a right. All of the things that you're taught as a child growing up, as far as retaliatory behavior, is interesting. Okay, I had an elder of the church one time that taught a physics class when I was in college, and he said the thing about anger or any other emotion that you might have towards someone, basically all you've done is allowed them to control you. Okay? If you let them make you mad, then you've just handed that over to them. This is the power you have over me to make me mad. Okay? My brother's like that. My brother likes to pick. He likes to pick at my wife without mercy. Okay? And I always have to tell her that you just have to consider the source. Okay? He does it on purpose. I can watch him do it on purpose. He tries to do it to me, and I don't care because I consider the source. I know exactly he's trying to get under my skin, and it doesn't bother me a bit. And I think that bothers my wife more than my brother bothers my wife. Okay, but if I was to retaliate, I would just give him exactly what he's looking for. I would just reward him basically for his behavior, and that's I just refuse to do so. And I make a conscious effort to refuse to do so. And so we as Christians need to make a conscious effort to refuse to retaliate in a worldly way to a worldly in a worldly conflict. Okay, there's certain ways. So as we talk about fear, the balance that fear has pulling you this way versus what you know to do as right and important this way, you have to find a balance with that, obviously. But Jesus' most striking promise, we learn in this portion of Scripture, is God's love and care is not only for every one of His creatures, but for every hair on your head. Okay? The depth of God's love and care for his creation, the depth of God's love and care for his people, his followers, the people that love him, is beyond what we can even imagine. And so God is the one we don't have to fear. And I know the scripture says, fear God and keep his commandments. Okay? I don't think the fear God in that statement is be terrified of your father. I don't think that's it. I think the fear God and keep his commandments is a respect and an understanding of his, even his personality, I think. But it's not, I don't think it's a terror. It will become a terror in the end if you're not doing what's right. You should be terrified of God. But in the instance that we're talking about here with the disciples, the apostles, God is on their side, and he's not the one they should fear. They should fear nothing because God is on their side. They should put their fear aside. They should overcome their fear, or they should do in spite of their fear. Okay, and so saying all that, they had an understanding that God cared about, or they were gaining an understanding of God, that he cares about even the most menial things of their life. You know, if the hairs on your head are counted, God cares about the details of your life. He cares about the temptations that you face, the dangers, obviously, that they're facing now, that they surround. But they also learn, and we should find comfort in, God is stronger than any opponent that we may find ourselves facing at any time that we'll ever meet. And we hear that a lot. I don't know that we grasp it enough, because it's kind of cliche. If you're fighting, say, an addiction, if you're fighting an addiction, God is stronger than that addiction. And obviously, God is stronger than addiction. I don't know that would bring comfort to somebody that's in the throes of that addiction. Okay, I think that's something that they can look back on when they overcome that addiction and see the love of God that brought them through that particular time in their life. And so, God is strong. And so you shouldn't fear anyone that opposes God, because God is stronger than those that oppose. And so, okay. So, Matthew 10, verse 32 through 42. Oh, look at us. We may just make it. And then we may just not. So, anyway. Everyone who owns up to being on my side, I will, and this will sound familiar, it's just worded different. We'll just call it different. So everyone who owns up to me, to being on my side, I will own up to them before my Father in heaven. But anyone who disowns me in front of others, I will disown that person before my Father in heaven. Don't think it's my job to bring peace on the earth. I didn't come to bring peace. I came to bring a sword. I came to divide a man from his father, a daughter from her mother, a daughter-in-law from her mother-in-law. You'll find your enemies inside your own front door. If you love your father or mother more than me, you won't deserve me. If you love your son or daughter more than me, you won't deserve me. Anyone who doesn't pick up their cross and follow me doesn't deserve me. If you find your life, you'll lose it. But if you lose your life because of me, you'll find it. Anyone who welcomes you welcomes me. And anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Anyone who welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And anyone who receives an upright person in the name of an upright person will receive an upright person's reward. Anyone who gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of the disciple, I'm telling you the truth, they won't go short of their reward. And there's a lot going on there. We know that at this time, the world that Christ lives in is in turmoil. We know that the message he's preaching is turning the world upside down. We know that the change that's coming and the change that's happening is stirring up the communities around where Jesus is preaching. We can see we know, because we can see it coming. We know the stories. We can see the betrayal as the story unwinds. We can see, how difficult this was for those that knew him personally. His personal friends, his ones that spent all the time with him, his apostles. We can see Peter denied him. We can see Judas betrayed him. We can see the rest ran away and hid. Knowing that, Christ still completed what his Father had planned for the earth, for the humanity. And so, as we look to what the scriptures say about the division, we can see Christ experienced his own separation from his, not only his physical family, but from his brothers that were with him through the whole thing. Okay, we read that Christ came to bring the sword to divide, and it wasn't the purpose, it was the outcome. Okay, division was bound to follow the message. Okay, and he was going to bring the message, and so Jesus came to begin and establish the new way of being God's people. Okay, and we've talked about that some, and not surprisingly, we know that some were not happy about that at all. They liked the old one just the way it was, and they didn't like having it disturbed. Don't rock the boat, don't tip the apple cart, all of those things. Okay, and he didn't want to bring division within households just for the sake of bringing division. Okay, that wasn't the thing. That wasn't the aim. That wasn't what he was about. But like I said, it was bound to. It was going to happen. We can see, just in things in our own life, things that need to be done, that knowing the outcome, but the things still need to be done. And we need to remember that Jesus is not talking about everyone that follows him will be separated from their family. Okay, everyone that follows him will be at odds with their father or their mother or their brother or sister or their mother-in-law or of course you'll always be at odds with your mother-in-law, and I'm not sure where that comes from, but that's just human nature or something. But because we find examples of the apostles having families, and we find, examples of families all following Christ, and we find examples of all that. So, but it's going to happen. It's happened in this room. I can just pretty much rest assured that it's happened in this room. Okay, and so. It wasn't an uncommon thing at this time, and so it wasn't I don't even know how to describe what the message was, but as God acts to bring His people to Him, okay, there's always some. And like I said, we can see it in our families, in our friends, and in the communities we live in. There's always some who declare that they don't need rescuing. Okay? They like things just the way they are. They don't want to be saved from their safe place. They don't need rescuing from this safe life. They don't need rescuing from whatever it may be. Okay? They're comfortable right where they are, and that's where they're going to stay. Okay, and you find it in the religious world too. If you've ever talked to members of a different religious organization or something like that, I know Melissa's grandma. I don't know that it was the first time I heard this, but it's the first time that I remember hearing this. But Melissa's grandma, her dad was a faithful, strong, one of the men that brought me to Christ. And Ma Hammett, which was grandma, had always gone to a different religious organization. Even though being taught the truth, understanding the truth, and even admitting and voicing out loud her belief in what Charles had to say, as far as that went, her attitude was still, once a member of this particular religious group, always a member of this particular group. And it's just heartbreaking to know that she's not alone in that sentiment. Okay, we live in a world that exists in that sentiment. Okay, and you can take it out of the religious realm altogether. Science tells us you shouldn't smoke. Okay? Science tells us that you shouldn't smoke. And smoking is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Okay? And if the population listened to science, it would be a $0 industry. And so knowing something and doing something are not necessarily the same thing. And so, go ahead.
I think you can also take this as sort of a caution too. I don't think he's saying here that he is going to cause division in your family. He's saying that your family is going to be divided against you somehow because of this.
Right.
If you think about it, our friends, our family are the most likely to lead us into sin. And that was not both easy to that.
Absolutely.
It's hard to say no to them. I mean, I've seen family members that were good Christian people, but when someone else that they love developed a sinful life, they approved of it and changed their mind. So we have to be very careful that even praying for family, because they're the closest to us, is sort of the most dangerous.
Absolutely. For those that didn't hear that, and I'll get right to you, okay? Keep your thought. For those that didn't hear that, and Christ mentions it, that we need to be wary of our family and friends because they're the ones that have the most influence on us as far as sin goes. It's, and I'm going to paraphrase, it's easier for us to accept bad behavior in our family and don't even necessarily have to accept it, but it's easier to ignore bad behavior in our family for the sake of not having that division and not having that rift, that family quarrel rift. And so, that is one of the warnings that Christ is giving. And go ahead.
I've become, I guess you call it, black sheep of the family when I became a Christian, because my family is basically turned against me. And I try to tell them the truth, and they don't want to hear it.
Right.
So I've been like this now for 50 plus years.
Yeah. So like I said, when we can find it in this audience, we have an example of a brother that's been set aside by his family, ostracized. Okay, yeah, and I don't know if it's
It's not antagonistic, but it's
antagonistic. That's a good word. That's the word I was looking for. Man, you just pulled that right out of the air. That's good. It's not antagonistic.
they just kind of ignore me.
It's just an understanding, and so that makes the life that we lead a difficult thing, and so we need to be aware of that. And obviously, Christ is warning them, and he's also in that last piece that we read. He's kind of telling the Israelites, the Hebrew people, that change is part of your heritage. They're all about heritage, and change is part of your tradition. And he quoted some from Micah, but to reinforce that the change was part of their, they're all focused on tradition. Well, he just turned that back around and said, well, you know what? Change is part of your tradition. This is part of what you hold so dear to that you're trying to push away because it feels different, okay? He will own us before his Father in heaven, and those who lose their lives will find them. And the last thing I think what I want us to dwell on is what he was telling his apostles was, whatever you do for Jesus, whatever you do for Christ, you're doing for God, okay? And so you have that comfort of knowing that when you do good in the name of Christ, you're doing good for and with God and his blessing. And so let's just remember that. So let's go do good, shall we? And next week we'll go on to chapter 11. Yeah, we're only 20 chapters behind the other class, but I guess I talk slower